Hi my love, so in today's video we'll be making this tight front mini flea dress with flea sleeve, and if this is something you're interested on, do wait to keep watching. For this tutorial I'll be working with 3 yards of chiffon fabric, and what I did was just to fold my fabric in bias form, and I'll be cutting 3/4 of my waist measurement, and I'll add 1 inch. So what I did was just to place the measurement, and I'll mark it from one end to the other end. At this point, go ahead and join those lines together. By the center front, I went up by 3 inches and I went in by 2 inches. So go ahead and do the same. Come up by 3 inches and go in by 2 inches, then curve like you see me doing. I'll go ahead to take my skirt length, and I'm working with 20 inches, and I'm going to be adding ½ inch for hemming allowance. So I'll go ahead to mark from this end, the end where we have our waist measurement to the bottom part. I'm going to mark out 21 inches, and I'll just be following the measurement till I get to the end part. Afterwards, this is what I have for now, and you should have something like this. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add allowance to the top part, and I'm just going to add ½ inch on that top part, and afterwards I'll go ahead to cut. I'll be using the front to create the back part, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that ½ inch allowance that we had, and I'll fold this like so and pin down. Next up, I place the front part to the back part, and I left space where we'll have our zip, and I have 1 inch, so I'll just go ahead to cut the exact flea that we had earlier on, and I'll open up the zipper part. I'll go ahead to notch that part where the zip will sit, and I'll cut 2 pieces of this, but the inner one will be shorter, and I'll show you guys what I mean afterwards. So this is what I have after I was done. For the back part, I went in to cut 17 inches different. So the lining piece is going to be 17 inches, and I'll also show you guys what we have for the front part. So they all are 17 inches, and I cut exactly as it was. I'll set this aside to cut the front part of the dress or the two-piece. So I'm gonna head to fold my fabric, and I'm going to cut a straight line that will serve as our start up line. And the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead to mark our shoulder measurement, and for my shoulder measurement, divide by 2 is 8. I'm going to go ahead to mark it like so, and I'll go down by my armhole line, which serves as my chest line, and I'll just go ahead to mark in 1 inch for shoulder slope, and also go ahead to mark the neck width and depth that I wanted. So for here, my neck width is 4 inches, and I went in to mark in my shoulder measurement from that end, and I'll connect with a straight line. I'll go ahead to connect the shoulder slope like so, and afterwards I'll go ahead to take the bust measurement. So I'll just go ahead to mark my bust measurement, and I'll add 1 inch for sewing allowance on that end, and I'm just going to go ahead to connect that line like so. So the next thing I'm going to do is to divide whatever I have here by 2, and I'll mark the line like so. Mind you, this is the back part of my top that we're trying to create. So this is what we have, and I'll also go ahead to mark my bust measurement, and I'm just going to go ahead to connect with a straight line from that end, and that will be the armhole for my back top. So the next thing I'm going to do is to get my the length of my top, and I'm going in with 16 inches for the length of this top, and I'm going to go in with half inch for the hemming allowance, and I'll just go ahead to connect that line like so. I'll go ahead to take my waist measurement, divide by 4, and I'm going to add 1 inch for sewing allowance, and I will connect the line like so. For my neck depth, I'm going to go in by 1 inch, and I'm just going to curve in the line like so. I'll go ahead to add my allowance on the neck area and on the shoulder area. So at this point, you can also go ahead to do the same. I've already done it on the down part, and I'll cut this out. So go ahead and fold your fabric in this way. That way you have both your lining piece and your main fabric together. So the distance that I left is 1 inch. I'm going to go ahead to pin this down so we take the measurements that we have. The only difference is that we'll be adding 1 inch for the dart that we'll be adding on this front part. So I'm going to connect that line like so, and I'll just connect those lines like you see me doing. And what I'm going to go in, I'll go up by 2 inches from this end, and I'm going to go ahead to mark that 2 inches line like so. So that depends on how wide you want your rope to be, but that's what I wanted for my front part, and I'll just cut everything as they were. Then coming to the armhole, I'm going to go ahead to mark this end like so. So I'll go in by ½ inch deep on that part and connect like you see me doing. So just go ahead to cut that part because the front armhole is deeper than the back part of your armhole. So I'll just go ahead to cut this out. So I'll go ahead to mark that chalk where the shoulder starts so I can take off the pin in order to create my V neck on the front part. So you can either use your ruler to mark a straight line like so, or you can use your free hand to mark a straight line. So afterwards I'll go ahead to cut if I'm comfortable with what I have. But before I do that, I'll go ahead to take that's my nipple to nipple measurement on that end so as to get my darts. I'll go in on that part like so. I'm going to mark in whatever I have for my nipple to nipple measurement, and I'll go up by 12 inches on that end, and I'll connect with a dart of 1 inch from the side. So this is a very tricky method that is quite easy. You have to pin the midpoint where your dart sits and the two sides where your dart sits like so. And I'll just go ahead to cut my fabric, and I'll flip it to the other side, and from that other side I'll trace the dart measurement instead of going into mark again. You just have to trace it, and you just have to open your fabric since we're also working with the lining piece. So I'll open it up to that lining piece, then now follow where the pin sits, and I'm going to mark a straight line like so. I'll do the same thing for the other side, and that is it on how to mark your dart on the whole pattern or the whole dress. And do let me know if you try this method and it works for you on the comment section. So you just have to tap it, and I'll also go ahead to pin this down so we'll stitch the darts that we have on each piece. So in cutting the sleeve, I've gone ahead to fold both sleeves together, and I'm going in by ½ inch on that end, And I also go ahead to measure. I've already cut out the measurement, and what I have is 25. So the next thing I'm going to do is to go in by 5 inches, and from that 5 inches I'll go ahead to curve my sleeve from where that 5 inch that I left. I'm going to curve from that end to where the 5 inch is, and that will be it for the sleeve. And I'll go ahead to cut it like this. Basically it will form that sleeve area, but if you have a sex fabric, you can go ahead to create more flay on that down part of your sleeve. So I'll gather this part like so, and we have that flay. So what I'm going to do also is to take the measurements 2 inches from this part, and I'm going to go ahead to take the length where the sleeve is going to sit to be sure that we have an accurate where this our sleeve is going to sit, and I'm going to create a straight line. So this straight line, like I said, is just to create a flame, give it more flay. So that's what I'm doing. But if you have enough fabric, you can go ahead to extend your flay as much as you want. For my rope, I went in with 5 inch, and the length can be anything you want. Like you can have your waist by 4 or 3. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to curve that part, the tail part of this rope. So the way I'm going to curve it is by just marking a straight line, or even using my scissors to curve it like so. I'll go ahead to stitch this up like so and give it a good press, and this is what I have after I was done. So I'll bring my top parts, and this is what I have for my top parts. I've gone ahead to sew the darts allowance that we marked earlier on. So I'm just going to go ahead to place the rope on it. Go ahead and open the two piece, then place the rope on the midpoint where we have the 1 inch shootout and cover it up. Then I'll just pin down like you see me doing. Go ahead and stitch this part like so, and I'll also stitch this part. I'll do the same thing for the other side, and I'll show you guys what I have after I was done. So I've gone ahead to give it a good press, and this is what we have. I'll also go ahead to bring the back part of my top to work with the back part. So for the back part, what I'm going to do is to fold this part like so. I'll fold and further fold again, and I'll also go ahead to stitch that part up. So the next thing I also do is to work with the neckline. I will do this, either you fold and further fold again, or you create a bias. I would want to create a bias for my own. I'm going to just cut in a bias form like so, and I'm just going to go ahead to place that part on the right side. I'll make sure that the right side is facing the right side of the bias that I cut, and I'll just pin down straight down. And after I was done, I'm going to cut the excess and I'll stitch. And what I'm going to do is to fold inside and further fold, and I'm going to go ahead to sew with a straight line. And this is what I have after I was done. So I'm going to work with the shoulder line. I'll take my back and I'm going to fold it, like open the front and fold it inside, and I'll take a pin to pin it down, and I'm going to sew with the allowance that we gave on that part, and that will be it for the shoulder line. And I'll do the same thing like you see me doing. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side, like you placing the back inside the front part like so, and pin it down like you see me doing. And I'm going to go ahead to sew with a straight line from that end, and that is it basically. And afterwards I'm going to show you guys what we have after I was done. So So this is what I have for my shoulder, and as you can see, it's all looking clean. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'll take my side back like we did to the shoulder, and I'll place both sides together inside the front side like so. I'll fold it like so, and I'm going to hold it and pin down like you see me doing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead to mark the 1 inch allowance that I gave, and I'll go ahead to stitch that 1 inch allowance like you see me doing, and I'll do the same for both sides. And this is what I have. When you open it up, it's all cleaned up. If this method is if you don't want to use your whipping, so I'll go ahead to sew that part, and I'll also go ahead to fold and further fold in, and I'll just make a loose stitch on that end. So this is what I have after I was done. So what I'm going to do is to gather this stitch in order to create join together with my sleeve. Okay, so I'll just go ahead to place that midpoint that we notch on the midpoint of my top, and I'll go ahead to pin round and stitch along. After I was done, this is what I have for the two sleeve, and we'll go ahead to create the skirt part. So for the skirt part, I've gone ahead to hem the down part of my skirt. As you can see, both the lining piece and the main fabric, I've hemmed them. So what I'm going to do is to mark the midpoint. Also go ahead to take the measurement of 1 inch on this end and also 1 inch from this other end, and I'll just create a straight line like so. So afterwards, I'm going to just curve it properly and cut any excesses. I've created a rope of camera. Then what I just did was just the same measurements, but I just fold it and press because I wanted this to sit inside like so. So what I'm going to do is to just measure from that rope where I need to start sewing, and I'm going to mark 1/2 inch on that end so it will be free for my rope to flow through that part. And I'm going to open up my fabric like so and push it inward, and I'm just going to go ahead to pin everything inside, and afterwards I'm going to sew from one end to the other end, and I'll show you guys what I have after I was done. But first of all, we're going to go ahead to pin the down part of my pants, and after I'm done pinning, I'll stitch this part and also the other parts, and I'll fix my zip to this. And this is what I have after I was done with the back part of the skirt. I've gone ahead to stitch the zip and fix my invisible zip. I placed the top part because I've already gone ahead to sew the other side of the top, and this is what I have, guys. I don't want this video to be as long as it is, so that's why I'm making it as short, but it's quite very understanding. But if you don't, please go back to watch. And what I did was just to join the side like we did to the front top part of my dress or two-piece. I'll just join the right side, making sure that the right side is facing each other, and I'll flip it to the other side and pin down. So I'm going to just sew one straight line like so. So just go ahead to sew straight like so, and do the same for the other side. And that's basically all for this video. And if this video was helpful, please do wait to subscribe to my channel, turn off your notification bell so you know when I upload new video. And if this video was helpful, please give me a thumbs up. Do wait to comment on the comment section so I know what's next video to do for you guys. And the beauty part of this two-piece is you can wear either of these or both together. Bye guys.